Hi everybody, and welcome to the third entry in my top 50 series. We're over halfway there at this point. This video in particular took me longer than usual because I ran into some complications. For reference, the selection of hard demons I initially used was every hard demon up until April 8th, 2024. But then the production of this video really started to drag, and it ended up taking so long that I decided to recalibrate my list and look at the catalog of hard demons again. So now it runs up until August 13th, Geometry Dash's 11th birthday. How serendipitous. As a result, this is probably the most up-to-date list yet, despite how much it was delayed. Anyway, it took me a long time to go over every single hard demon in the game, but I can finally present to you the top 50 greatest hard demons of all time. One more thing about this list, since the difficulty of these levels is lower than the other top 50s I've made it more of an effort to play them thoroughly. The methodology of this list was to first assemble a list of 80 or so levels that I thought were kind of interesting, and then play through them, practicing them until I got a feel for the gameplay well enough to do the level one section at a time. This is also something that extended the production time of this video, but it does mean that I have a strong handle on the gameplay of these levels, and as such it will factor into my judgment fairly significantly. Anyway, that's enough preamble. Let's dive right in, shall we? First up, Right Angle. For this one in particular, I was paying close attention to the gameplay, considering this song is from Friday Night Funkin', which is a rhythm game. And, you know, I'm not going to say that the music sync is bad by any means, but it also doesn't really elevate beyond most other levels. Especially the ship and the wave parts felt like they only loosely synced with the song. They felt like they relied a lot on your brain filling in the gaps, which doesn't feel all that satisfying to me. I think the level looks pretty cool. It has a very old Microsoft Media Player kind of vibe to it. Very colorful visuals that dynamically change with the song. It is kind of interrupted by the construction site part at the end. That feels really out of place to me. I also would have liked if there was some consistency between the visuals of the level and the two singing voices in the song. Like if both were represented by their own color scheme. One could be represented using blues and greens, and the other with reds and yellows. The colors do change when the voices switch, but there's no consistency there as it stands. Neither of the voices are paired with their own color scheme. Just a lot of missed potential with this level, I feel. It definitely could have ended up much higher on the list. Man, I really wanted to love this level because the whole premise is so fucking cool. Credits. Plays with the different game modes in such fun and unique ways. The gameplay in this level is creative as hell. It's just that this does not feel good to play at all. There's no elegant way to say this. The level is just buggy. It feels like the level will sometimes just kill you randomly. It doesn't have nearly the same polish as the standard game modes have, and playing it makes that discrepancy glaringly obvious. I couldn't even get the colored button part to work properly. Every time it would just spawn me near the ceiling at the end and kill me. Maybe it's silly to think that it would even be possible to pull something like this off, but it just feels really disappointing. It's a crying shame because I still really like this level conceptually. Also, despite my complaints, not the whole level is buggy. Some parts work just fine, and the spider part especially holds up really well. You have to memorize the layout of the gameplay and execute it over and over as it repeats and gets progressively more distorted. That's cool, I like that. I like this whole level, but it just doesn't always work. I'm sure there's ways around this, ways to finagle this level in just the right ways to make it consistent, but that kind of defeats the point in my eyes. At that point, you're struggling against the mechanics of the level and not working in tandem with them. Antechamber. This level is missing a jump pad. This might seem like a minor issue, but it actually impacted my enjoyment of the level pretty heavily. Okay, so the drop of this level is like pop 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 pop, hold, pop 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 pop, hold. You hit the button 4 times and then hold for the dash orb. Except on this second section, you have to press it 5 times because you have to make this first jump yourself. And it messes with the flow of the level really badly. To be fair, it probably wouldn't have affected me that much if I liked this kind of gameplay to begin with, but I don't. I've said this about some other levels already, but it's just too button mashy for me. Making a jump doesn't feel satisfying because it's difficult to gauge any feedback to your inputs, since you immediately need to press the button again. It just makes it feel finicky and inconsistent. It's a shame because otherwise I do like this level. The wave is a standout part, for example. I really like this effect. And the circle effect near the beginning of the level too. This level is cool. The drop just kind of kills it for me. If you've seen my top 50 insane demons video, you might recognize this level a little bit. It's the predecessor to Beneath the Surface, which is a level that placed very highly on that list. Bury the Sun didn't really hit the same, as you might have guessed. I don't really feel that immersed in this world, I think mainly because I don't really vibe with the song. There's still very clearly a narrative here, a world to explore and speculate about. Like, there's these primitive looking huts, but there's also concrete structures and satellite dishes and stuff, which definitely don't fit together. Maybe these huts were remnants of an ancient civilization or something, and these more modern buildings are from a settlement of researchers after the fact. The area seems pretty desolate either way though, and it's constantly plagued by sandstorms, which is probably why none of these people are around anymore. Anyway, I'm just speculating here, but the point is that there is some genuine world building here. It's just that I don't really feel that emotionally invested. Another reason for that is the climax of this level, because it happens so early in the level, and there's just a lot of meandering afterwards. The progression of this level feels like a wet blanket on the experience. It's not satisfying at all. I think it really puts into perspective how much of an improvement Beneath the Surface is over this. The main draw of Late is definitely the gameplay. It's very rhythmic and satisfying to pull off. It does take some good practice though, this level is tricky. However, with the gameplay being its main draw, I can't place it too high either. It does this very obnoxious thing where it spits you out of invisible portals, and man, that just triggers a primal reaction in me. It makes me go monkey mode. I don't have that much to say about the decoration in this level. It's not really all that noteworthy to me. I guess the masking effect in the cube and robot part is pretty cool, and I like the way the ship part looks. Vanilla Lime Maroon is a level with a very cool premise of only using 3 colors in a very minimalist way, mirroring the song. I think that's a really awesome idea, though the level doesn't really fully commit to the premise. There are some blacks and purples which break the theming somewhat. I can kind of understand using black to complement the brighter colors, but at the same time you could have easily used maroon for this purpose. I feel like when you're going to go out of your way to implement a gimmick like this in your level, you have to commit to the bit, otherwise it just ends up feeling half-baked. NIE is a very slow-paced, subdued kind of level. It's not spectacular by any means, but I do enjoy the way this level is structured. It feels very sporadic and kind of random. Navigating this level has a maze-like quality to it. If it weren't for the fact that there's jump indicators everywhere, man, I'm about to take back everything I said about memory levels, because this just feels so much worse, man. It messes with the steez. You can't have an air of mystery and intrigue about a level that's filled with indicators. It's completely contradictory. Take out the indicators and this level moves up like 10 spots. Ditched Machine is an old classic. The main draw of this level is definitely the gameplay, but visually I think this level holds up decently well too. Especially the dark ship corridor and the big shimmery spike circles near the end really stand out to me. But yeah, the gameplay, despite being this old, I don't think we've seen another level that plays quite like these duels. Ship and cube duels are pretty hard to pull off to begin with, so most people don't bother, but this is executed really well and is a lot of fun to play. It just takes a little bit of practice to get the hang of it. Fiffy Glizzy is a very unique level with early 2000s computer aesthetics as its central theme, which definitely tickles my nostalgia a lot. I feel like this level could have gone a little further though. For example, there's a big wave section in the middle of the level that has more of a generic tech kind of vibe, which just feels kind of underwhelming compared to the rest of the level. I already mentioned old school media player visualizers earlier, which I feel definitely could have been adapted here. That would have been really awesome. Well, either way, despite some thematically lackluster parts, I do like the visual style of this level quite a bit. Tower Descent is a 25-second level, and it looks gorgeous. The opening effect of breaking through the floor immediately sets the stage for a beautiful and intense level, and it doesn't slow down for even a second after that. The thing that really gets me about this level, though, is not the length. I think there's a lot of unexplored potential with shorter levels, actually. It's just that Tower Descent doesn't play well at all. It has some of the most asinine button-mashy gameplay I've ever seen, and it just makes me want to tear my beautiful, luscious hair out. It does get a little better later on, but man, this level is the definition of aggravating. Breakthrough is a level that always felt really awesome to me, especially back in the day. It's such a fast-paced, high-intensity level with these iconic transition parts that give you a split second to breathe before throwing you right back into the fray. That's cool. It's cool. But at the end of the day, even if you were to make a 17-minute video of pseudo-poetic bloviating while you sit there in your bisexually lit bedroom smelling like a finely aged piece of cheese, you know, hypothetically, it doesn't take away from the fact that this level has a ball maze. This ball maze single-handedly killed my desire to ever play this level to completion, because they're designed to be anti-fun. I know you can kinda tell the difference between the real and the fake outlines here, but try doing that while you're going at triple speed through the level. You're basically required to memorize it. I've said this before, I think, but the only good ball maze that exists in the game is the ToE2 ball maze, because it uses player colors as an indicator. Looking at this, I just go completely cross-eyed. Anyway, I think the biggest strengths of the level are in its second half, although most of the level plays pretty well. The wave and cube near the end definitely stand out though, and they're really well designed to boot. Especially the cube part with the slopes is incredibly memorable for me. It's the main thing I associate with this level ever since I saw it for the first time. Anyway, I do have a lot of nostalgia for this level, but I can't exactly overlook its more major flaws. Elo 2 is a level by an elusive creator known as Mikosta GD, who was briefly relevant on Twitter before disappearing from the community entirely. Their tweets are still up, and they're definitely weird.
There is no relief from this hell that I inhabit. This personal space of my own, from which I will never be able to see the light of day.
People were really surprised to see this level of skill with the editor to come from someone who types like this, but I suppose it was a lesson about prejudice for all of us. Anyway, about the level itself, it's a flashy and colorful level. I like the design of this level quite a lot, especially the wave and the memory part in the middle of the level just look really good. That said, this level has quite a lot of memorization to it, which hurts it a lot in my view. I'm sure this is abundantly clear to you at this point, but I don't want to memorize stuff. There is nothing else in this game that kills my engagement with the level more than memory gameplay. Another thing about this level that irks me, though to a lesser degree, is the ship part that comes after. I'm already pretty bad at ship control as it is, and these jump rings are placed in the perfect positions to just mess up my day, dude. This part feels significantly harder than the rest of the level in a way that's really frustrating to me. Illusion of Space is a very flashy level with very nice, clean-looking visuals and effects. The level just looks really pretty. I'm especially a big fan of the star that collapses into a black hole. That's just super cool. I've said this before, but I'm still very attracted to this sort of stuff. I'll always have a strong fascination with outer space. Play Outer Wilds. Still, I'm placing this level relatively low because I feel like it's a little too difficult for its own good. To me, it definitely feels like this level is all about the spectacle. But the timings in some of these parts are weirdly tight. It's just a bit too demanding for something that looks like it should be an exciting, fun romp. Playing this level feels like it should be an easy or medium demon at most. The inflated difficulty definitely takes away from the excitement here. That sounds kind of paradoxical, but it's just a result of having to practice the same part repeatedly, which will make it lose its magic pretty quickly in a level that's mainly driven by spectacle. the top is a very flashy and colorful level with a very polished and clean look to it. I really like the way this looks. It has very pretty effects and the visuals are just done really well in general. Playing it, well, it left me feeling kind of mixed. The minicube at the beginning is especially aggravating because it's very finicky with the copious amounts of jump rings and its button mashy nature, which is an awful way to start the level. The rest of the level plays well enough, and the final wave section actually had me in a super satisfying flow state, though I suppose it's difficult to mess up a wave part to begin with. This is a level that was actually featured in an old-ass Zobros 1.6 themed creator contest. Crystal Lining. The design of this level is pretty intricate and creative. It honestly looks really cool, especially considering the limitations placed on the level. The level doesn't really develop across its runtime though. The beginning and the end of the level feel pretty much the same. There's not a whole lot of variety. Well, except for the very end where the background goes dark. That's a neat touch, I suppose. How it feels is a very upbeat and colorful level. There's nothing about this level that's particularly complex or technically impressive. The design is pretty simple, the gameplay is pretty straightforward, and the effects aren't groundbreaking by any means, but it's just done really well. The level looks kind of amateurish in some parts, but I find that kind of charming in its own way. Besides, it's definitely very effective in its simplicity. This level is just exciting and fun to play. Now that I've actually played Yume Nikki, I can say with total confidence that Outsider Zone doesn't feel remotely similar to that game, and I will never bring it up again. That said, I do like Outsider Zone. It's very abstract and trippy as fuck. I like the moment where you leave the boundaries of the level and enter the void. That's like Vertigo personified. This level puts me in a weird mood, man. It's just so out there. It plays with its decorations in completely unorthodox ways. I have to say though, the jump indicators feel incredibly out of place here. They really don't feel like they belong in an otherwise abstract level like this. Goofy Adventure. I'm gonna be honest, I expected something more on the silly side with a title like that, but there's definitely goofier levels than this on this list. This level is cool though. There's a lot of variety in this level and it doesn't always feel super cohesive, but the different parts do work well together. It's a very flashy level with clean designs, and it has some fast-paced, high-intensity sections, creating a tense atmosphere as you play. Kid Core is a very creative and fun-loving level. I really love the McDonald's children's playroom vibe it has going for it. You know what I'm talking about. Although, despite this joyful aesthetic to the level, I can't help but feel that there's some sinister undertones too. This doesn't feel like pure childlike innocence, it feels moderately disturbed. The colors sometimes feel a little dull, that flower guy is a little strange, and there's a part of the level where all the level's whimsy just evaporates for a bit. It really feels like something ugly is hiding just below the surface, but we never quite get to see it. To put it another way, it wouldn't feel out of place to me if the flower guy started oozing black sludge from its eyes, like something you might see in World of Goo. I really love the theming of this level, but what drags it down for me is the gameplay. This is a style of gameplay that I feel comes secondary to the visuals of the level. You wouldn't make gameplay like this if it weren't an afterthought. Maybe I'm wrong, but there's fuck-ass transitions everywhere, there's annoying moving objects all over the place, it's total chaos. If the gameplay were at least passable, this would go up 10, 15 spots. Inferno Catalyst is more of a lesser known level, but I like it a lot to be honest. The design is pretty good overall, but there are a few parts in particular that really stand out to me. Mainly the ball corridor halfway through the level looks really cool, and it also has some creative gameplay associated with it. Definitely the main highlight of the level. Other than that, I like the duels quite a bit too. They're not as unique, but in combination with the very fast-paced, intense part of the song, it just looks really cool. It reminds me a little of Kinetic Bypass in that sense, but, well, Kinetic Bypass is pretty bad compared to this. Now this level is groovy. Discotheque. I didn't exist back in the 80s. I was barely even alive for the 90s, so it's not like I have personal experience to go on, but this looks like a pretty stereotypical 80s aesthetic. The only thing it's missing is Elvis Presley singing in the background, I guess. What I'm saying is that I like the design of this level. The main thing that really drew me in is the disco part. Just really strong colors here, and the colored starry background gives it such a chill party atmosphere. I like the meteor part as well, though I'm not entirely sure why there are meteors in this level to begin with. Gameplay-wise, this level isn't outstanding or anything. It's actually pretty straightforward for the most part, but you know what? I think that's honestly fine. Ito is a comet face level that is in the unfortunate position of being succeeded by well rested, rendering it kind of obsolete. In comparison, this level just feels undercooked now. That's not to say that it's bad at all. I do like this level. It's just difficult to be particularly enthusiastic about it when a vast improvement over it already exists. Either way, this level is still pretty. Neo design was a cool style for the time it was relevant, but I don't really have that much else to say about it. Out of This World is a level made out of TV static. That's pretty wacky. That's pretty out there. It also has these stylized roses, making for a very unique look to this level. The gameplay is similarly wacky. It's skewed dual waves that really disoriented me at first, but it just takes a little practice and there's nothing to it really. This level is a fun little novelty, but I don't have a deep attachment to it or anything. The roses make me think it's about this girl's love life, but she has such an annoying voice with such heavy vocal fry, you'd think her vocal cords were torched on the barbecue or something.
Oh, Michael visited me in a Dunkin' Donut.
What? What did you say? Speak up, woman! This level is primarily on the list because it unlocked some pretty deep memories of me playing Picross 3D for the Nintendo DS. Little thingy. Picross 3D is a really great puzzle game, by the way, just putting that out there. Anyway, this level is very colorful and very playful, but it also has a chill vibe to it that makes playing it kind of a relaxing experience that no other level really matches. It's kind of weird to call a level in a supposed rage game relaxing, but that's genuinely how I felt playing this. The gameplay does hold this level back for me though, because near the end it does start getting way too intense for its own good, which kind of messes with the whole vibe of this level. Chill out, man. Take it easy. Flak Flippa! I don't know what that means. Maybe I just said a slur. You may know Incendium for Tetrix, which is definitely his most popular level, but this is another classic 1.9 level by him, and it's a lot of fun. This level has some parts that are unique to it to this day, like the wave part with the intermittent cube jumps, for example. It takes a little know-how, but pulling it off feels so satisfying in tandem with the song. The duels near the end are probably the most famous for this level, especially the cube and ship duel. It takes some time to figure them out, but the level is surprisingly forgiving here. Visually, the level is also very blatantly a product of its time, which, well, I like the basic 1.9 aesthetic, to be honest. I feel like this visual style in general is timeless, whereas the basic 2.0 and 2.1 styles feel very dated at this point. They're just not as versatile, I suppose. I initially wasn't going to put an intermission here because I don't really have anything relevant to say this time, nor do I have any honorable mentions I'd like to discuss. But screw it, man, I'm not about to break tradition, you know me. I'm all about those traditional values like, hating women and being a creepy weirdo about people's gender identity and sexual orientation. I'm going to use this opportunity to vent my frustrations about something, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. I've thought about making a video about this, but it's such a small thing that it just doesn't seem worth it. I'll just put it here. Anyway, I can be pretty critical of levels sometimes, and invariably when this happens, there's always some annoying people that crawl out of the woodwork who will tell me that I shouldn't be so negative. And it's like, who gave you the right to criticize me criticizing someone else? I'm sorry, but I couldn't help but notice you're being kind of negative right now. Curious. Have you no joy and whimsy in your life? I enjoy hating. Let me be a hater, damn it. With all due respect, please shut up. Like, I get that it might hurt people's feelings when I criticize their levels, but if you don't want to hear it, you literally don't have to watch my videos. Not to mention, it's not like it's a personal attack. Like, it's one thing to criticize my criticisms for being poorly thought out or poorly substantiated, but I get the feeling that some people want me to couch my opinions in a bunch of meaningless platitudes like, oh well, this isn't for me, but I can see why some people might like it. Like I'm talking down to a toddler. Wow, little Timmy, you really tried hard. Congratulations. Here's a gold sticker. Is that really what you want to hear? I swear, people just hate a guy who speaks with conviction, dude. I have no respect for these people, man. If you want to see less negativity in the world, look inward. Start with yourself. Don't tell me to stop being negative. If you actually believe the shit you're saying, you wouldn't be spreading negativity about me either. Here's a proposition. If you don't like my negative criticism of a level, I'd much rather hear you say why you do like it, because that's actually something I can chew on. Maybe you'll even change my mind. Who knows? It has happened before. Besides, if we as a community want to get better at creating levels, you can't just rely on positive feedback. Knowing what doesn't work is just as important as knowing what does work. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that little diversion. Thank you for humoring me. Rest assured, the rest of this video is going to be very positive. So let's just get right back to the list in 3, 2, 1. No, this level is broken because of the 2.2 update! Ah! This is your regular reminder that Drop Top fucked up the 2.2 physics and we should all be mad at him for it. Okay, so I guess I lied about being positive. I promise that that's the only negative thing I have to say. It's ironic too, because Cycle's copy is a level made by Robtop himself. Can you believe the things he was able to do way back in 1.0? Or 1.1, I guess? When was the ball introduced? That's crazy. I can definitely see why he reworked the main levels though. These are way too difficult and visually overwhelming as an introduction to the game. Also, for a level that's supposed to introduce the ball game mode, there aren't nearly enough ball parts. And they don't get nearly enough time to develop either. As an online level, I think this works a lot better though. I think the designs of this level are very pretty. I especially like how the robot part looks with its crystalline structures, and the ship part with its intricately designed wheels. Those parts stand out to me, but it's worth noting that this level doesn't really have any lackluster parts. It's overall really solid. The gameplay is pretty average, I would say. The only thing that stands out in that regard is the sticky ball, but that's broken now, which is distressing to say the least. Well, I guess I had fun playing the level until that point. I'm not going to dock points for this though, because it's not like it's the creator. Wait, hang on. Actually, it is the creator's fault, because the creator is Robtop himself. Maybe I should reevaluate the placement of this level. Miami Car Trip is a pretty cool level. It has this 80s vaporwave aesthetic that's definitely been done before, but I do like the way it looks. It's pretty iconic for a reason, I guess. The main reason I like this level is the gameplay, though. In particular, the ball section and the ship part. The ball part has a gimmick of steep slopes and jump rings, and navigating these kinds of interactions is a pretty rare treat in Geometry Dash. Similarly, the ship part isn't so concerned with ship control like most other ship parts are. It's more about hold and release timings, which gives it a completely different feel. And if you know me, you might already be aware of the fact that I'm not great at ship control as it is. So for me especially, this kind of gameplay is a breath of fresh air. Good Morning is a very cute level. I mean, just look at this little guy. And look at that guy. What the heck? This level is nice and colorful with playfully designed structures and has some fun gameplay to boot. Especially the duel and wave parts at the end feel really good to play. I like how the level changes its color scheme to reflect the time of day, but it does bother me that night comes before evening here. That's not how the day-night cycle works. Kind of a minor gripe, I guess, but details like this add a lot of flavor to a level. And when you carelessly fumble them like this, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth, you know? All you really have to do is switch the colors of the night section with the evening section. You can keep the gameplay the same even. Or you could start the level with the evening color scheme, then move to night, and finish with a good morning. I'm Rick Harrison, and this is my pawn shop. Yeehaw, mother trucker! Wither is, well, It's hard to pin down. For starters, the song has this country rock redneck kind of vibe to it, and from the beginning of the level, it seems like it's going to take place in the American Midwest. But the rest of the level takes place in a factory and a space station. I guess there is also a small conservative town in this level, which is easily recognizable by the noose that hangs from the scaffold here. But I don't know, man, I think I'm reading too much into it, because this level clearly doesn't take itself too seriously. It has goofy text all over the level, which I think undermines the intensity of the level a lot. There's nothing wrong with a level being lighthearted, of course, but it just creates a lot of tonal whiplash. I get the feeling that that was the point to begin with, so I guess the joke is on me specifically. It's just strange to me to put so much effort into a level and then to undermine the whole thing with some pretty cheap jokes. Still, I did place it relatively high on the list, as you can see, because it doesn't ruin the level for me either. To be honest, I'm not sure if it would have placed higher if the jokes weren't there. The level is already pretty tonally inconsistent as it is, so a few out of place jokes don't really drag it down any further. And you can't really get away from the fact that the level looks really good, after all. The design is surprisingly intricate for something that looks this clean, and the backgrounds are really pretty. The gameplay itself is pretty fun and creative as well. Forsaken Neon. For all you new gens out there, this is another 1.9 classic, and if I had to guess, this is probably one of the most fondly remembered ones. And for good reason. Forsaken Neon has a completely unique visual style to it that hasn't really been matched to this day. This light blue color scheme... Wait, actually, what about Delta interface? I just thought of that. Okay, I guess I was lying. Well, whatever. Anyway, this level has a bunch of iconic gameplay sections, that being the ship part with all the speed portals, which doesn't actually play that well in practice. The cube part in the middle, which requires some creative thinking to figure out, which I think is really cool, as well as the crazy looking ball part that is actually really easy. And the final ship part, which is a beautifully tense way to close out the level. The gravity changes make this part deceptively tricky. Hypermania is a very pretty, very flashy level with great visual effects. I'm especially a fan of the cube part where one of 3 sections lights up sequentially, but all the other parts look great too. Playing this level is an experience I can only describe as being hype as fuck. The gameplay is pretty straightforward, but it's energetic and just a lot of fun. I love the way this level ends too, with a nerve-wracking ship part to serve as a final stress test. For those of you who were present during the premiere of the Top 50 Insane Demons video, I'm sure you remember there was a profound disappointment developing in chat as the numbers marched on and no sign of Heinz ever emerged. It honestly made me a little anxious. I'll accept your apologies for this in the comments below, but rest assured, you dumb animals, here's that Heinz representation you've been clamoring for. Psychosis. I went back and forth on this level. I tried to beat it a while ago, but I found the gameplay a little aggravating, so I dropped it. Replaying it for this video though, I'm coming back around to liking it again. There are some button mashy sections to this level, but I think it works because there's also some moments where the level allows you to chill out and breathe for a bit. That's just so valuable. Being in a constant state of anxiety just doesn't make for a fun gameplay experience. You need the calmer moments to make it effective. That said, the last cube is still evil as fuck. I don't know what it is about this last blue orb in particular, but you have to tap it so lightly to make sure you don't accidentally jump off the platform afterwards. Even more so than usual somehow. Dying here just feels so toxic. It's not a satisfying release timing. Either way, I do like the design of this level. Heinz has a very particular decoration style, and it really shines through here with his immaculate eye for color. It doesn't try anything groundbreaking for the most part, just using standard blocks and decorative objects. And yet, it still ends up looking very polished and distinct. I have a lot of respect for that. Fex is a level that exclusively uses 1.0 objects, which is pretty crazy when you look at the actual level. I mean, just look at how creatively such a limited palette of objects is being utilized to create these designs. And even with these limitations, the level still manages to be pretty varied too. This level is frankly a masterclass in creative design, and a reminder that limitations do indeed inspire creativity, which is something we tend to forget with the plethora of tools we have at our disposal nowadays. The level also had to get creative when it comes to gameplay, because because the only gameplay elements available back then were the ship portal, 2 gravity portals, and a yellow jump pad and jump ring. That's it. Good luck making a full level with just those things. And, as is emblematic of a lot of very early custom Geometry Dash levels, this level does rely on memory somewhat, which I don't really vibe with. But at the same time, it is kind of telegraphed because memory can't easily be hidden with the limited tools of 1.0, so I don't know, I guess it's fine. I enjoyed playing this level and figuring out how it all clicks. Scarred Hands is a level that took me by surprise by just how well it actually plays. There's a gentle rhythm to this level that feels incredibly satisfying to follow, though it does get a little more chaotic later on. Still, I was surprised by how much fun it really is, because it initially looked kind of unassuming gameplay-wise. I like the way it looks a lot too. There's a lot of deep, saturated colors, and the level has an almost psychedelic vibe to it. It's so unrestrained and downright wacky. I mean, just look at these fade-in effects. One-Eyed Man is mostly here because of its gameplay. It's extremely creative and fun to figure out because it's not always immediately obvious what you have to do. You may have to actually think about the level for a bit. Speaking of which, I kind of got myself stumped on these rotating designs because they look like some kind of code. They reminded me a little of the Voyager Golden Record, if you know, you know. I looked into it for like 5 minutes and then came to the conclusion that there isn't actually anything to it after all. Every part of these circles looks like it's been copied from the same string of objects. That's kind of a shame, but I guess it's more my fault than anything. Regardless, I do like the look of this level, even though it doesn't seem to be hiding some grand secret. It makes good use of those invisible blocks to create very dynamic looking structures that seem to hide their true nature when you get close to them. There was actually some controversy about this level a while ago. Sunward. A certain subsection of the community has this weird idea that there's objective standards to judge a level by, and they felt that this level didn't measure up to them. But, you know, that's silly. Those people are silly. In fact, I've already made a video about how silly those people are. In truth, Sunward is really good. It has a pretty simplistic design style, but it uses unique effects to keep it interesting. Most importantly though is the gameplay in this level. Nearly every section of the level has a unique little gimmick to it, or is just generally being creative with the different gameplay elements, which makes for such a titillating experience. Just figuring this level out is a treat in its own right, and pulling off these weird interactions you don't normally see a whole lot feels really cool. There's also something to be said about how this level limits itself. Like in the jump ring part, Naishifu could easily have used all kinds of colors, but they only ended up using green ones, blending nicely with the background and creating a fun swinging motion with the player. My new map is off on a rocky start because the first thing that immediately stood out to me is this bird character, which is from a popular YouTube channel. It's not an original creation, and I'm not going to sit here like a disappointed high school teacher lecturing you about copyright or whatever, because frankly, I don't respect intellectual property rights. I just think this is kind of lame. It's uncreative. Thankfully though, this is the only slip up the level makes in that regard, because the rest of the level is actually very creative. It's kind of crazy because there's a ton of distinct looking parts here. It's kind of a patchwork of disconnected parts, like a one-person mega collab, but it's still stitched together somewhat cohesively. Anyway, the design of this level is really good. There's a lot of inventive application of different object types, like the vines and pillars in this part are made out of text. There's also a part that's partially made out of drawn on paper, and you can see the little bird guy at the end with a pencil, besides some empty pieces. I also love the adaptation of PG Clubstep Cat here. Its shape is so iconic, but then texturing it like a real cat makes it look so cursed, especially when it starts talking. It's like I'm in the Twilight Zone, man. The gameplay in this level is pretty good too. It's not always straightforward, but I feel like this slight confusion really adds to the out-of-pocket atmosphere of this level. I'll be honest, I groaned a little at the name of the level when I first saw it, because this kind of pseudo-ironic naming convention has been around for a while now, and it's like, I just don't really like it anymore. Topic for another video, maybe. In hindsight though, I think it's fine here. I like this one quite a lot. Amalanchier. Amalanchier is a very atmospheric level depicting the apocalypse, I guess. You traverse this peaceful city until you enter this portal, and then everything goes completely nuts, like the 7G incident or something. The environments of this level are really cool, they look really nice, and the city feels like a lively interactive space as you go through it. I like this level a lot, but at the same time it doesn't really grab me like some levels further up the list did, and I'm honestly not sure why. Maybe the level is a bit too abstract for my tastes, or maybe I just don't vibe with the song as much. It's definitely not the gameplay though, because I think that's probably the level's strongest suit. Playing this level is a delight. It's just so creative with all the different gameplay elements, and the structure of the level is so open-ended, which makes it a lot of fun to figure out what exactly you're supposed to do. I do find some parts a little lacking. For some reason, some parts have jump indicators which rob it of any thought whatsoever, and the climax of the level feels chaotic to the point that it becomes difficult to see. I guess I can understand the jump indicators in this part, but the swing copter really didn't need them if you ask me. I remember first seeing Tile on my Twitter feed, and I was immediately impressed by it, and I beat it on that same day, before it even got rated. I was a little surprised to see it rated as an insane demon at first, but it has since been lowered to a hard demon. I like this level a lot because it was one of the first 2.2 levels that really impressed me with how it implements all the new features. And, you know, because it looks very pretty. I mean, just look at this spiky part, man. And the colors dancing on the screen in this next part are super cool. The screen effects can be a little disruptive at times, but overall this level just looks really nice. It feels good to play too. I especially like the spider part where you jump off the ramps and time your green orb inputs. There's a lot of momentum to every jump, so every click is its own tense little moment. I was afraid that the robot part at the end might feel a little janky with the moving sideways parts, but it works well and feels satisfying to pull off. Deconstruction is not a conventional looking level. It's pretty out there. It has this dark, foreboding atmosphere interspersed with these jarring shrieks. The tension gradually builds as the song introduces more percussive instruments, and the visual effects of the level get more and more intrusive, until you break away from the level completely and ascend into this prolonged vertigo at the end. I think it's a really well done emotional trip. It's quite simple on the surface, but I really like the build up and payoff to this level. Cryo is the successor to Misty Mountains, and immediately obvious is that this level looks a lot more competently put together. It's not nearly as crusty and amateurish as Misty Mountains is. Worth noting though, I wasn't really bothered by that, because Misty Mountains does such an excellent job at establishing an atmosphere. I'm not going to say that Cryo doesn't also do that, but I think it's a little worse in that regard than its predecessor. Granted, the level looks really good, of course. I like the snowflakey look to the saw blades, and these blocks legitimately look like they'd be freezing to the touch. The design is on point. Also on point is the gameplay. There's a lot of attention to detail when it comes to the music sync, and it ends up flowing very nicely. I guess I'm just missing that secret sauce to tie it all together, like a central set piece or something to make the whole experience feel a little more grounded and less like a Geometry Dash level. If it sounds like I'm waffling, that's because I'm having a lot of trouble formulating my thoughts here, but to me this level just doesn't quite reach those emotional heights Misty Mountains did at its climax. I wouldn't have placed this level so high if that was all there was to it though. I think the last part of the level really picks up the slack in that regard, depicting a trek out of a cave into the snowfields, plagued by strong winds and heavy snowfall. The way the music slowly fades out too alongside the level makes it feel so desolate and hopeless. I think this is a really powerful way to end the level. This level is a classic. In fact, this might actually be the most iconic level in the game ever. Of all time, period. 9 circles. And you know, it's iconic for a reason. It's really damn good. So good, in fact, that it inspired a whole trend of similar looking levels. So far, no other level has managed to achieve this level of relative popularity. It's honestly mind-boggling. One thing 9 circles levels often get wrong is they're hyper-focusing on the wave game mode. I can understand why it happens though, because it is the climax of the level, and the wave in 9 circles is easily the most recognizable and most difficult part. This flashing effect is crazy because it's not easy on the eyes, but it conveys this chaotic intensity very well. The colors themselves are bright and vibrant, but the level itself still feels dark and foreboding. The reason it's a mistake to hyperfocus on the wave part is because it's not even half of the level. Most of the level isn't wave. The cube parts, the ship part, as well as the ball are vital to the whole experience. For example, the final cube in 9 circles is an agonizing stress test. It's not too difficult, but there are some deceptively tricky jumps here that can easily kill you if you're nervous. And having just done the hardest part of the level, you're going to be nervous. The stakes are a lot higher, and it adds so much dramatic tension that it feels incredible to beat. Rushing too quickly into the wave part is a mistake for a similar reason. There's a tricky ship part early on in the level that uses slopes in a pretty unorthodox way for the time, and it acts like a filter. You're not guaranteed at all to get to the wave part every attempt, so when you do, it really makes it count. Honestly, I think the difficulty balancing of this level is pretty much perfect. There's a lot more to say about this level, but I should really wrap it up. These reviews are getting pretty long. First impressions, the title of this level goes hard. Dance Massacre. It's just so evocative and raw, and I think that deserves some acknowledgement on its own. I love the color composition of this level a lot. It has this deep red color accented by a bright yellow that makes the level really pop out, and I think the parts where the yellow accents take more of a backseat also provide a nice contrast to highlight this. The design of this level is very 1.9 coded, but it's unmistakably a 2.0 level, although an early one at that. As a result, some of the 2.0 elements feel a little out of place, but it's honestly integrated pretty well for the most part. I like the way this level looks. You can't discuss Dance Massacre, of course, without also mentioning the gameplay aspect of this level. For the most part, this gameplay is pretty good, nothing extraordinary by any means, but then you reach the slope part, and it's easily the most fun part of the level by a mile. Your cube is flung hard into the air, there's a lot of momentum to it, and timing your inputs to deal with the sudden direction changes feels incredibly satisfying. It's a beautiful, fluid dance on a blood-red stage. Jamais vu, or the sense that something that should feel familiar to you somehow doesn't. It's the inverse of deja vu. This level looks really good. It has very nice looking art that has an almost otherworldly vibe to it. The fish honestly creep me out a little bit. Why are their eyes so big? It's like I'm playing Dredge all over again. Ugh. I think the design of the level is deliberately nonsensical. The perspective on the city part is all crooked, there's umbrellas standing up by their handles, the creepy floating fish. I think the idea here is to remove or alter the context in which we usually see these familiar things in order to make them feel strange and out of place, like a bona fide jamais vu experience. The trippy color scheme and song also play into this. I think it's really cleverly executed. The level's different assets show up at the very end again too, stripped from all their prior context into an incoherent mishmash. You might not immediately recognize that you've seen all of these objects before, but that's exactly the point, isn't it? Forest Temple is another beloved classic in this game, and inadvertently became a sentimental piece of Geometry Dash history after Michigan's passing. It's meant to be a reference to the Ocarina of Time Forest Temple, but it's very much doing its own thing here. The gameplay in this level feels very raw, but not in an undercooked way. The obstacles in this level feel organic. You actually have to think about the jumps you make instead of following a predetermined path. Less like crossing a human-made obstacle course, and more like traversing a dense forest speckled with ruins, defying the forces of nature. I think that's awesome. Jumping on the monster's nose is so memorable for exactly that reason. I like how this level consistently uses those grassy spike objects, especially when they brush up against you, and it really feels like you're passing through dense foliage. The whole level feels overgrown with plant life, but there's an air of magic about it too. The green fire, the crystals, the particles emanating from the top and bottom of the level. I think I've only ever seen Michigan use this technique of placing portals just out of view for their particle effects. I love that, which we'll never see again because it's not really necessary anymore with the 2.2 update. Yeah, Forest Temple is great. Future Funk has left an everlasting mark on this community. People love to sing the praises of this level. There are some who argue that it's overrated, but I disagree. I think this level is rated just the right amount. It's a remake and mashup of Clutterfunk and High Life, which I don't know why, but I'm not going to argue with the results here. To put it simply, this level looks beautiful. Granted, there are some lesser parts, but for the most part, this level looks really slick. It plays really well too. The gameplay in Future Funk is honestly some of the most fun I've had playing Geometry Dash. It just captures that sense of flow so well. It just feels so satisfying. Especially the duel is a highlight in this level in both respects. This may well be Jonathan GD's magnum opus. The Furious. Novelboy is an interesting creator because he has always had a unique way to approach the editor, for better or for worse, and The Furious is a notable example of this. This level is rough around the edges. The design of this level can feel a little unpolished at some points. The gameplay can feel a little janky, but none of this is to the level's detriment. Well, most of it isn't to the level's detriment. When I say unpolished, I don't mean to say that this level looks bad at all. I like its design quite a lot. It looks very unique. This level has a certain unkempt roughness about it that a lesser creator might try to sand off, but The Furious is unapologetic in that regard. I think that gives it a lot of character. I guess what I'm saying is that this level is raw. Although it will never be as raw as Dark Rainbow Rebirth. That level is so raw, it'll probably just give you food poisoning. I think this strikes a good middle ground. The part where the level flashes different styles is unreasonably cool. The gameplay can feel a little janky at times, and I do have a big problem with the mini wave portal at 76%, but other than that, it doesn't really get in the way for me. The ending of the level is significantly harder, which can be a little frustrating, but pushing through is so satisfying. I think there's some merit to the beginning of the level being a little easier in comparison, because the drop is just hype as fuck to play. The song goes hard, you're having a blast, and when you get past it, that's when shit starts to get real. I think that's kind of fun. Oh, by the way, when the song goes, "Let the pieces fly," you turn into a ship. I thought that was a neat little detail. Number 3. Permafrost Caverns. I forget, was Anubis a beloved creator back in the day? I didn't really pay him any mind, which is crazy because, man, these levels rock, dude. Permafrost Caverns is, well, it's an early 2.0 level, and it suffers pretty badly from early 2.0 syndrome. For as rough and as old and crusty this level is though, this level has a damn vision. It depicts a journey from a frosty mountainside into a frigid cave full of ice and crystals. It's a simple progression, but this level is so creative about it. The part that really made me fall in love with this level is the mirror part. It would be one thing to reflect the level about its axis perfectly, but it pulls some magic mirror crystal palace shit, and the reflection shows the true nature of the level, while the normal version has illusions trying to trick you. It's not like this is a groundbreaking puzzle. There are countless games that do this, but man, it really adds a layer of mystique to these caves that otherwise would not be present. And then, of course, there's the final reveal that these caves house a frozen body of a mammoth preserved in permafrost. I'm just going to say it, man. I've said this about Misty Mountains, and I'll say it about this level too. Permafrost Caverns is a cool level. In hindsight, I kind of regret placing Misty Mountains as low as I did, so I'm not going to make the same mistake with this level again, because I really do love it. Number 2. Conchetumare X, if you'll forgive my swearing. I'm told it translates to motherfucker X. I'm not sure why, and I'll be honest, I liked the name more when I didn't know what it meant, but whatever, man. I don't speak Spanish anyway, so there will always be a degree of separation for me here. I can just pretend it means something more serious, or nothing at all. After all, Spanish isn't even a real language. It couldn't possibly compare to our glorious Dutch language. Anyway, I really love Conchetumare X. Dare I say, it's even the best Nacho 21 level. It's just really good at establishing atmosphere. The setting is this decrepit looking factory with loose scaffolds hanging in the background. The decoration is sparse and you're moving slowly. But then, the drums kick in and your speed kicks up a little. There are suddenly these moving conveyor belts or chutes. Gears slowly begin to turn, knocking the rust off of them before they find their groove and begin to spin continuously. And from then on you start exploring the factory in earnest as machinery whirs to life and starts clunkily, mechanically moving back and forth. It's not remotely the only factory themed level on the servers, but not many of them match the execution of this level. It's a lot of fun to play too. It has some deceptively tricky parts and it doesn't necessarily hold your hand. It really feels like you're traversing a cold, relentless environment that doesn't really care for your presence one way or the other. By the way, it's this level that inspired me to put 5 fake coins in removed submission. Just a little fun fact for you there. And finally, at number 1, the best hard demon in the game right now, and I'll just give it to you straight here. It's a last minute upset. The early bird begets the bone election. Where do I even begin with this one? Maybe this is a controversial take, but I think CW probably has the best writing and storytelling in all of Geometry Dash. Looking at this, that sounds like a joke, but they're legitimately the only creator who has managed to overcome this challenge. Oftentimes when people put a story in their level, it comes off as incredibly cheesy. And while this level does have plenty of cheese, it's not just cheese. It's a whole ass sandwich. You'd be forgiven if you thought this is one of those levels that's silly just to be silly, but there is genuine substance and intrigue to this story. It's a story about an eldritch being known as the Earliest Bird, and how the people constructed the skeletal sentry to protect them from her terror. But it's also a story about self-sacrifice and familial love. I think the reason it really works is because it really straddles the line between self-seriousness and parody perfectly. I'll illustrate with an example. So when the Earliest Bird is summoned, there's a little text crawl, a poem announcing her arrival. I'll just read it to you. In a bastion beyond our world, she perches in an empty hall. Celestial wings become unfurled, inspiring a primordial squall. Ever dreadful, yet sublime, to thee that hear her wretched call, she exists unrooted in time, the earliest bird of them all. There are so many layers to this, man. Okay, so to get the obvious out of the way first, that last line is a punchline. This poem is structured like a joke. We've all heard the saying about the early bird. I don't think I even need to say it. This level takes that innocent concept of the nebulous early bird and puts a Lovecraftian twist on it, which is so out of pocket and ridiculous that it threatens to undermine the seriousness of the level. It relieves narrative tension, but the level never drops the act either. It doesn't go bdumch, so to say. It just carries on as though nothing happened, as though the earliest bird is something we should actually take very seriously. And the thing is, this poem goes so hard that you do end up taking it kind of seriously, despite the levity that's also present. Compare this to the closest comparison I can think of, the Yatagarasu, the one by Manix, that is. Even in the depths of night, when no other bird dares to take flight, one alone soars to shine the light of righteousness on the world's blight. And that one is me, for I am the great thief, the Yatagarasu. I hope this illustrates why the earliest bird works so much better, right? Like, what is this rhyming scheme? What does righteousness have to do with being a great thief? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. Also, at risk of sounding pretentious, if you're writing a poem, you gotta flex your vocabulary a little bit more than this. Put simply, this is sauceless writing. The description of the earliest bird sounds so much more menacing in comparison. Anyway, enough about the damn writing. Let's talk about the level itself. I think the design style of CW's levels works brilliantly in tandem with the writing, because it certainly looks kind of amateurish, using a lot of basic objects that give the level a certain rawness, like it's a recent tab level. But then there's also some intricate art that sets apart the big set pieces of the level, like the earliest bird and the skeletal sentry. Another thing I like is that the people in this world are just Geometry Dash cubes. It's so silly on the surface, but putting them in this world that feels real and well thought out makes it work in spite of that. The gameplay in this level feels appropriately janky, but it makes sure not to overdo it, which I am grateful for. The ballot harvesting part seems intimidating at first, but it's honestly really easy to figure out. There's only one way to do it, really. Speaking of which, by the way, make sure to harvest plenty of ballots for Kamala Harris in the upcoming presidential election as well. Thank you for doing your part. The whole level comes together really well. I didn't anticipate this at all, but when I look at all the other levels, I feel like I have no choice but to put this on top. It's just that good, man. And that's the whole list. Oh, by the way, this is probably as good time as any to clear up that both Mikosta GD and RobTop Archiver are social experiments by Durian Head. So those levels are also by him. I assume most people know this at this point, but I feel like I should still elucidate this, just in case. Special thanks to GD Colon for making the GD Browser website, which was an invaluable tool for this project. The convenience this website affords makes a project like this much more manageable. And thank you to Niko for making me a little drawing for me to use when I read the poems. That leaves only medium demons and easy demons. We're getting there. I either never saw or completely forgot about Permafrost Caverns before making this video, so that was a delightful surprise to come to while making this. I had already seen the earliest bird, but I didn't think it would place that high either. The more I played it though, I just grew to like it more and more. Other than that, there weren't too many big surprises this time around. It's always fun to dig up some hidden gems in the process of making these videos though. This one in particular took me like twice as long as the others, because I really got it into my head that I only wanted to use my own footage, which I would accomplish by simply copying the levels and recording a botted completion for them. But for the longest time, that simply wasn't possible after 2.206 came out. I waited over a month for a working bot to come out for Geode, and it started to look like it wasn't going to happen anytime soon. So I ended up biting the bullet and just using other people's footage as usual. Another reason this video took so long to make is because, well, making a video like this is just a lot of work in general. If you've ever made a YouTube video, you probably know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, like, a video like this easily runs into the hundreds of hours of work. That's unpaid labor, mind you. Well, not exactly unpaid, but YouTube isn't bringing in the big bucks for me. I'm doing this out of love for you guys. And for this time around, I also took a little extra time and care into the writing and editing parts. And I think it shows in the video, but I guess I'll leave that judgment up to you. Anyway, point is, this took a lot of time. I put a lot of work into this channel to make videos I feel I can be proud of. If you'd like to support me in my endeavors, you can sign up on my Patreon. I would really appreciate it. Speaking of which, special shoutouts to my grandpa demons on Patreon, Belfry Clock and Emma Bell Helium. Don't forget to subscribe to keep up with my videos. They're really good. And thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.